if you hear this noise coming from the heater, that's water boiling in the burner, and this a blockage of some kind. In this case, it's probably scaling on the thermostat. So we'll take this apart and take a look. Okay, so the heater's been off for about 5 minutes or so, so it had a chance to cool down. And I now have the pump off. So this is a Raypak heater. I don't remember the model number, but a Raypak heater. And the problem for this heater has been that there's what they call a unitherm governor, and it's behind this port right here. You can take that port out and see if there's scale built up in there. That'll cause the boiling and the noise that you hear. There's you can use a screwdriver with a square shank. Fits in there pretty well, and you can loosen that up and take that out. So I'll take that out and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so that's loose now, and it's loose to the degree that I can throw it out the rest of the way with my fingers, and you can hear air sucking in. I expect we'll get a little water out of there. And then the governor is tucked up inside there. So reach in, take that out, and that's what the governor looks like. It looks just like a thermostat out of a car engine. And as you can see, that's thoroughly packed up with scale. So that is certainly my problem. When you look up inside, there's an awful lot of scale as well. So the best thing to do is to take the manifold off and clean the entire thing out. So to do that, let's set that aside. We have to take off this panel. There's screws around the perimeter of the panel, and it's best to take off, there's actually two panels. There's a seam right here. It's best to take off both the top and the bottom, and then you can have access to that to this manifold. I'll also take off these pipes, the inlet and outlet pipes, so I can get to this get the manifold completely off. So I'll take these off here and here, and then down here and here, so I can just get these pipes out of the way and get that whole manifold out of there. Testing the thermostats. There's a new thermostat that is open in hot water. Set that down, that will close. Here as it cools off. Here's the old thermostat that did not open. That's what it looks like when it opens. Kind of see through the other side. Okay, so now the upper and lower panels are taken off, and you can see what it looks like inside. So the next thing to do is to remove the screws that hold the manifold on. There's probably about a dozen or so screws that go all the way around it, and there's a little protective plate here, so we've got to take this one off first. There's one nut there that comes off, and then that plate will come off, and you should be able to probably leave all the wires connected, but you could take those off. This would have to be unscrewed in order for you to get the wires off of that. So we're just going to try to take the whole thing off without removing any wires, and that way we won't have to worry about how to put the wires back on too. So we'll take off all the nuts, and we'll take another look and see what everything looks like inside. Okay, we're back, and we've taken all the nuts off of the manifold, all the nuts that are holding the manifold on. Word of caution when you do that: Be very careful taking those nuts off. You do not want to drop those down into the side of the heater. And you'll have to take the whole heater apart, I think, in order to. You certainly have to take some more panels off in order to get the nuts back. So that is off now. I'm going to try to do this with one hand, and we'll take this all of the remaining way off. And you can see inside there that there's just a load of scale in there. So it's probably a good thing that I just took the whole thing off. And there's a load of scale on the tubes down here too. So probably ought to see what we can do to flush all that out. So I have to set this down and turn off the camera. And we'll see what we can do about cleaning all this up. To clean the scale out of these tubes going through the heat exchanger, some of them are packed up pretty thoroughly with scale. So I'm going to try a shop vac and hook that up and just see what I can do to draw all that out. I'll give that a try right now. Well, sorry for the shaky camera, but that's the best you can do without a cameraman. But it looks like they did a pretty good job of clearing that all out. Try a screwdriver down in there and see if we can see if there's anything more in there. No, that feels like that cleared it out pretty well. Can't be certain of that, but I don't see anything coming out of the screw with the screwdriver, so. That one's a little tight. Nothing's coming out with a screwdriver, so we're going to assume that that's okay, and clean up the rest of the manifold and put it back on. So we cleaned up all the scale, and now I want to clean up the manifold. I cleaned up most of it again with a vacuum, but there's two pieces to this, and so you want to take this off. I pre-loosened this a little bit so you can see how it comes off. I'll have to kind of pry it off or lift it off, grab it with a screwdriver. But I think that we'll find, we'll find that there's a whole bunch of scale in here too. My water must be very, very hard. So this is really thoroughly packed up, and this is obviously where the problem is. So let's clean all that up. We'll put that back together, and then we should be all set to put things back together. We'll set that down. Okay, you can see now we got that all nicely cleaned out. And now the tubes are cleaned out, manifolds cleaned out. We've got our second half, which will go back in there. And then we've got to put the gasket back in, but before I do that, I'm going to go get some waterproof grease, and we're going to put some grease in there to make sure that that stays in the groove when we go to put it back in, so when we hold it up vertically, that the O-ring or the gasket will stay in place. We also have the unitherm governor. It's all flushed out. There's instructions in the user's manual for this heater on how to test this. You can put this in in water. You can heat up a pot of water and get it up close to 200 degrees or whatever, and you should see that open up and let water flow through just like you would with a thermostat for a car. In fact, I'm kind of wondering if this isn't from the same people who make those. There's also a gasket for this that goes on the back side of that actually goes in first, and that has to kind of be stuck on there with waterproof grease as well. Although you could probably run that thermostat without a gasket. I don't think it would make any real difference, because it's if it leaked a little bit of water, that wouldn't have any effect whatsoever. It doesn't need to be a waterproof seal. It's just there to maintain the water. They won't say that the temperature of the water should stay at about 100 degrees. It shouldn't drop below 100 degrees or it can cause damage. There's more information about that in the Raypak manual if you want to figure out how you test that and why that's so important. But I'm going to go get some grease, we'll grease that up, and we'll put that back on and start wrapping this up. Okay, so we got that all cleaned up. Got a layer of waterproof grease all in through there. So I'm going to take the gasket and we'll put the gasket on. I'll put the camera away again in order to I'll take two hands. But we'll show that gasket in place next. Okay, so now that gasket, or O-ring if you like, is in place, it's kind of thoroughly squeezed down into that grease. So once again, I'm going to set the camera down while I use two hands to put that up. It's very important that when you put that back in place, that you don't get that gasket out of that groove, or you're going to have a leak and you'll be doing this all over again. Or worse, you might damage the O-ring. So with great care, we'll put it back on those studs and set it in and start putting the nuts on, and then we're nearly done. Okay, so the manifold is back in. All the screws are tightened. Got our little heat shield put back in. What I haven't done is I've still got to put the thermostat back in. So I have that up here, and that is that came out, the cover came off by itself. So I took the thermostat and gooped it up with grease, and there's a gasket on there too. So we put that in there, make sure that that's in real nice, and then we'll put that down in. I'll thread that in, and then I'll have to take the camera away while I tighten that up with my screwdriver again. Alright, so we have everything put back together. Here's the thermostat's back in place. Everything's tight. Water lines are on. And we'll just check and make sure that there's no water down here. We don't see any leaks. So that looks good. Let's turn on the heater. Plug it in. We'll turn the temperature up to 80 or so. Let the heat kick on. There's a spark. And here the heat just kicked on. So we're starting to get some heat flowing now. There's some heat. Now usually the problem I'd had was that you get that kind of banging sound that boiling water would happen within probably about the first 20 or 30 seconds. And I'm not getting it at all right now. So I would say all that scale was the problem. And I think it's okay. So I hope this helps, and leave some feedback if it did. Thank you.